Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about matching your project and your team. This is a topic I've wanted to talk about for a long time, but I've put it off because I know I've talked a lot about nuance and context on this channel, but I was trying to figure out a way of approaching this where people didn't immediately think I was denigrating the team or any of the teams I'd worked with. Despite all the wonderful things I've said, I know people will just jump there and go, he's putting down the team. So let me just say, this isn't about the people. This is about a reality that I've talked about at length. And it's true for me, it's true for you, it's true for everybody. There are things you're good at, things you're not good at. That's just the truth. So I've talked about all of my strengths and weaknesses, and it's part of the reason when I did The Outer Worlds, I wanted Leonard Boyarsky to be the co-game director because he was really good at things I was really bad at. Now, in a perfect world, you will end up with a team that perfectly balances all the strengths and weaknesses. In other words, there are some people who are really good at something that other people aren't on the team. And anything you can think of, there's somebody on the team who does it well. Guess what? We do not live in a perfect world, which means that you're always going to end up with a project design and a group that doesn't 100% mesh. Now, over my career, I've had, luckily, fortunately, experienced both ways of putting together a team. I've got to pick people for a project, like Arcanum. Arcanum, Leonard and Jason and I designed out almost everything before we hired a single person. So as we hired people, we tried to hire people who matched the game we were trying to do. Even then, we ended up with so many features that were so wildly different and required so many different kinds of expertise that we didn't end up with a strength in every area of the game. But in the past, this isn't how it tended to work. Usually, especially if I worked at someone else's company, I was just assigned people. I had a project. It was assigned to me. And I've done games both ways. I've done games where a lot of the design was done and then people were assigned. I've also done games where we started working on a design, we got people assigned, but the game wasn't really well designed and we designed it for our strength. Fallout is a perfect example of that. Fallout was a game made on the strength of the people who happened to get assigned to it. I even talked about that in one of my Fallout videos because I said I made 3 engines, an isometric engine, a 3D engine, and a voxel engine. And as a side note, nobody talks about voxels these days. They were like the hot shiz in the 90s. Everybody thought they were going to be the next big thing, and they went away. That's half the reason I don't like to talk about current events, because you never know. The things that are super popular now and everyone's talking about, no one will even talk about next year. So my voxel engine wasn't very good, but neither was the 3D engine. 3D engines just weren't there yet when we made Fallout. It was low poly, so people and creatures and props all looked pointy, and the textures were low res, so everything was covered in a texture that was smudgy and smeared out. Like the ground, you look at the ground in old 3D games, and it's just a grass texture that's been smeared out over way too large of a set of polygons. So had we made Fallout later, and I think Leonard and I talked about this in our chat, we would have made Fallout 3D. It just would have made sense, but not back in the mid 90s. We used the isometric game. The isometric game was the best one. Could the 3D engine have been better? Yes, that was not my strength. So Fallout was made with what that team could do the best, and that's the project you got. Now let's compare this to movies. In a lot of movies, the director picks the cinematographer they want to work with. They get to pick actors they want to work with, script writers, an editor, and they try to pick all these people for the strength they think they need. Like the script writer writes a script and they think about what actors would play these roles well. Oh, we're going to need this kind of cinematographer. There's going to be a lot of low light shooting or a lot of action shooting or a lot of outdoor shooting. Let's pick a cinematographer who's good at that. Now, imagine trying to make a movie and people just get assigned to you. And it's random, and some of them have very little experience. Imagine you're going to make a big movie like Titanic, and instead of Leonardo DiCaprio, you get assigned a recent acting school graduate. Now, you might get lucky and end up with a graduate who just knocks it out of the park, but you probably won't. Even the best actor needs experience to hone their craft, to, what do they call it? Come in, get in touch with their instrument. I don't know anything about acting. So the same thing has happened in games, except since we don't get to pick people, we end up with a collection of people with strengths and weaknesses. Now, let's just say, given that you cannot ever have the perfect team, what do you do when you have a team that is weak in some area you need in the game you're designing? Well, you can just not do that game. You can either redesign the whole thing. You can look at your team and go, okay, I understand the strengths and weaknesses of this group. Let's redesign the game from first principles to go for our strength. I guarantee you this will, A, piss off your publisher, whoever's giving you money. Whoever's giving you money will be like, we were talking about making this game and now you're making this game. Anyone in charge of you, leads, managers, VPs, will be really upset. But you're also probably piss off the team, because some of those people came on board because they wanted to make this game. And they'd already started to make things for this game. And now you're making this game? So no one will be happy with that. So you can drop it down a level and say, okay, I've looked at our team's strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to take out some design elements of this game that we're weak on. And I've done that. What you have to do is, A, pray the thing you're taking out isn't mission critical. Like if one of your design pillars of your game was, amazing gunplay for combat, and you can't find anybody who's good at that, at the design or code of that, and you take that out, oops, there went your action RPG based on fantastic gunplay, just had one of its pillars removed. Or severely weakened, and you weaken a pillar, the whole thing crumbles. But also you have to hope that even if you design out that element because you don't have anybody who's really good at making it, you have to hope the players aren't going to notice, hey, this thing that I expected to be in here isn't here. I wonder why this is missing. And you don't really want to do interviews and go, yeah, none of us were good at doing that, so we tossed it. So you usually just go, oh, we went this direction. Trust me, I've watched videos where I'm like, I'm reading the subtext of this director and I know what he's really saying, which is they couldn't do it. They couldn't figure it out. You have other options. You could just go ahead and do it. You could say, you know what? Let's go ahead and do the gunplay. It'll be weak, but maybe we can shore it up by having really cool weapons and really cool perks and mechanics, even though the gunplay itself is kind of mushy. I've seen people do this. You shore up the weak parts of your game with really great parts of the game in other areas. And that's a way you can do it. In the past, one thing that happened was you just took on a lot more of the work yourself, especially if it was like, well, the team isn't good at this, but I've done this before and I'm still better at this than some of the people on the team. I'll just do it. But the problem is, what if you're still weak in that area? You're still going to have a weak designed part of the game, a weak feature. But even if you're not weak in it, does that just mean you do way more work, that you're crunching, that you're spending weekends at the office? What happened to your work-life balance? The thing that's become really important. Are you just allowed to go, oh, sorry, our team isn't good at this or as good, so we're just going to work a lot harder? I don't think that's a good idea. Now, there are other solutions that people would absolutely hate. One of them is, after a game goes out, you lay everybody off. And then, when you go to make a new game, you hire for that game's design. You want good gunplay? You hire someone who's good at it. You want good lighting? You hire someone who's good at it. People would hate that. Guess what? That's how the movie industry works. The unionized movie industry consists of people who work project to project. And in between projects, they're not attached to anything. And the side effect of that is, if you're hard to work with, you find it hard to get attached to something even if you're good at it. So it's a very competitive, type of work. Another way to do it is make your company so large that you probably have people who are good at just about anything you can think of. But big companies aren't necessarily the best at using their manpower like that and moving people around. Two, a lot of people hate being moved from project to project. Like, you're thrown into some project when it's at some stage, you do the lighting, and then boom, you're on to the next project. Trust me, every audio designer in the industry knows what that's like. They get thrown into projects when it's at a certain stage, they put sound effects in, they put music, and then they're on to the next project. But also, a lot of you don't like games made by big companies. You call them soulless, you call them passionless. So I'm not sure that's the best solution either. So if we're back to making games with a smaller talent pool, because if you don't want a big company, I can only think of two solutions. You either make a game that contains some parts that aren't as good as you wish them to be. You designed something that expected it to be this good and to support all these other things in the game. It was only this good because that's the best your team could do. Or you make an entirely different game, and a game that plays to the strengths of your team. I've done it both ways. Like I mentioned, there's problems with both of those. So I don't see a good solution. I just see a lot of solutions that you're going to have to decide. And even if you're a solo developer, even if you're out there and you're an indie solo dev going, this will never apply to me, it does. You've got strengths and weaknesses too. So you're either making a game with some parts that aren't as good because you're not good at it, or you're making a different game than something you may want to make because you simply don't have the ability to make the parts you want. I almost said, I hope you guys like this video. This video was not about the people so much as how you make projects with people and the problems you're going to run into on any project made with any people. As I wanted to put it out there as this is the reality of any project-based or team-based project. It's just the reality. It applies to games. It applies to movies. It applies to making cars. So try to keep that in mind when you're putting together a game and a team. Try to match them as well as you can, and then make some tough decisions in places that there is no match.